A quick disclaimer before we begin this morning's program. The views that we express today are our own and do not necessarily represent those of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York or the Federal Reserve System.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to all educators of different backgrounds and fields attending today. We know that your professional development time is valuable, and we're honored you have chosen to spend it with us. The last 2 years in the world of education has been a challenging time for us all. Hybrid models and virtual learning have changed the way students learn. And furthermore, with social issues and the responses to the pandemic becoming major topics of conversation, civic engagement is vitally important, if not more so than ever. And we know that our teachers are on the front lines. My name is Tess Huang, pronounced she, her, hers, and I'm the Strategic Operations Manager for the Economic Education team at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Our agenda today is designed to foster a conversation and inspire civic engagement among teachers and their students. We'll be hearing from experts in a panel, your fellow educators, and from inspiring groups of students. There's a few housekeeping guidelines to keep in mind. There is closed captioning available, as well as ASL interpreters. We have Adrian Adamo that will be going first. And then we at the New York Fed are honored to partner with 3 organizations on the front lines of civic engagement: United Way of New York City, Global Kids, and Generation Citizen. And apologies, Beth Zurich will also be signing as well. So we hope by attending this event this morning that you will walk away with tools and new ideas that you can bring back to the students so that they can continue to look critically and thoughtfully at the world around it. Without further ado, I'll pass the microphone to our first presenters of the day, students from Global Kids. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Leticia Brutus, and I'm a senior at High School for Public Service, and I've been a Global Kids youth leader for 4 years.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jeba Anjum. I'm in 12th grade, and I go to Bronx Studio School for Writers and Artists.
Global Kids is a youth organization that educates, activates, and inspires youth from undeserved communities to take action on critical issues facing our world.
Today, we are going to talk to you about 3 civic engagements, which are peer education, Census Squad, and youth organizing. So first, I want to introduce to you the peer education, which is an example of civic engagement. Every year, Global Kids holds an annual conference, which is led by students like me. Last year, I was one of the facilitators at the conference, and I facilitated a workshop about economic inequality, and the audience were the middle school student. Economic inequality is the unequal distributions of income and opportunity between the different groups in society. Many government policies allow these gaps in social wellness to persist. Many people are often left trapped in poverty with little to no chance to climb up the social ladder. This is an issue of public concern. So by educating my peers about this issue, I was taking action to improve my community. So peer education is a great way for students to practice civic engagement. Now, I'd like to pass it to my next leaders, Mishka and Tim.
Another example of civic engagement is the Census Squad, which is a group of people that work together to spread awareness about the census. The census is important to take because it determines how much money your neighborhood gets for things like schools, hospitals, and parks. The census count also determines the amount of elected representatives your community has. Zoe, a few other students, and I were part of the Census Squad back in 2020. At the time, we were only in 6th grade, but we were still able to help our community.
With the Census Squad, we spoke to parents and made posters and awareness videos. We practiced answering questions about the census with a trainer at our site. At school, we spoke in front of parents, letting them know the importance that their families get counted. We also made posters to put around our neighborhood and informational videos for social media to reach more people.
Okay, I'll be introducing ATRAP, which is a youth organizing group in Global Kids, and we focus on organizing issues that we feel strongly about. So there are many ways that students can be civically engaged, and one such way is volunteering in their communities. One example of that civic engagement is ATRAP in Global Kids, which is a youth group that meets every Thursdays to organize on issues that they feel strongly about. Last year, our focus was on health and racial justice, and through this, we were able to create goals that we would like to see happen along the way. We've realized how much we need more BIPOC, Black people and Brown people in the healthcare communities. And one such ways was educating New Yorkers on ways that we can help out. One example of our goals that we had created was to have more Black and Brown people in the healthcare professions and ways to address medical bias. We're also able to make 4 committees that would have a specific role, such as community outreach, reaching out to people in the community, a policy committee where we created different policies we would like to see enacted, and policies that are also here that deals with racial justice. We had the education committee and social media committee. The ATRAP students were able to participate in open conversations on leadership at the Edge of Future Summit. In addition to that, on our Earth Day event, ATRAP shared about how we can support the Earth Day, and our event had speakers from Peace Boat, ATRAP Bryant, Astoria Film Festival, Triage the Hive.
One tip for teachers to help youth be civically engaged is to understand what students already know about what is happening around the world. Make sure to inform them of what they don't know and engage them in fun ways.
Teachers should also find ways to incorporate social justice issues in your lessons throughout the year, but not just in one lesson. Also, be sure to keep it fun.
Teachers can also teach students about politics and voting rights so that they can be ready when they're 18. Teachers can also show students how to volunteer to register people to vote.
Teachers can also encourage the students to do their best, because doing their best is what makes everything happen. Your encouragement and support will allow them to further make a change in their communities and beyond. If they lack the support, they won't be as motivated to keep going. But if they have that mentorship or leadership that encourages them to keep going on, it will allow them to be more civically engaged in their communities and throughout the world and be able to make a change. Once again, thank you all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, students, for sharing your experiences and giving everybody just a little bit of a taste about what civic engagement looks like in the classroom. We really appreciate you presenting and talking about your projects today. Hello, everybody. Hello to all of our attendees. My name is Graham Long, and I'm Associate Director of Economic Education here at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and we're delighted to have you all attending here today. There was a reason that we wanted to lead with a student presentation, right? And that's because the theme of today is about civic engagement, right? The theme is about civic engagement amongst our students and what that looks like in the 21st century. And so right off the bat, what we wanted to kind of, hit you with over the head is the idea that students are out there doing these things now and they can do it. And so what we're hoping to do throughout the course of the next about hour and 45 minutes is give you some inspiration, some tools, and some guidance about how you can incorporate civic engagement projects in your classroom and in your community. And we'll be hearing from another student group later near the end to send you off into your day feeling optimistic and excited about everything that kids can do. And again, we want to thank our student presenters who were here just now. And so with that in mind, what we're going to do today is the next section, we're going to have a panel. And in this 30 minutes or a power half hour, we're going to go to some experts who are going to try to give you a sense and a lay of the land a little bit about what the civic engagement looked like. And so with that in mind, I would like to introduce cameras on here. You have already met Jatna Ramirez, who is Director of Curriculum and Special Projects at Global Kids. I would also like to introduce Elizabeth Angeles, who is the Associate Vice President of Advocacy at the United Way of New York City, and Elizabeth Clay Roy, who is the Chief Executive Officer at Generation Citizen. And these are all organizations involved in civic engagement in some way. And so we want to kind of pick their brains a little bit and get a sense of, again, what does this look like in the classroom? What does civic engagement look like, the landscape, and so forth. And so with that in mind, I'm going to start with a two-part question, and I'm going to start this question towards Elizabeth Angeles. And then, of course, if anybody else wants to jump in, please feel free. But Elizabeth, kind of a two-part question to get us rolling, right? The theme of this is civic engagement. How do you define civic engagement? And why is civic engagement so essential?
Thank you for that question, and good morning, everyone. And thank you to the students who opened us today. So civic engagement, I would define as having the skills and knowledge to use your voice to influence, shape, and impact community. This can take the form of, as we heard from the students, political and non-political activities. The students already talked about raising awareness of issues, increasing collaboration to develop solutions. But the reason why this is so essential is because it helps develop a collective responsibility for all of us to really shape the society and communities that we want to be a part of. For United Way of New York City, our mission and focus is really on serving Black, brown, and low-income communities. And when we think about how civic engagement plays a part of that, it's really about being able to develop, again, participatory communities where everyone is actively engaged in shaping what we want our communities to look like. And this is essential because without that, we cannot adapt to the evolving needs of our communities. So that's what I'll share at this time, and excited to get into it further with my fellow panelists.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for getting the ball rolling. Kind of any other thoughts? How would maybe, how does your organization define civic engagement? Why is it essential? Any other thoughts?
I'm happy to add in. I think that both Elizabeth and the students really defined it well. And the only things I would add is, I think part of what civic engagement provides opportunities for young people to show are their deeper understanding of their communities and their qualities of empathy in action. So one of the things that we care so much about in the early grades and as parents is making sure that young people are developing those strong social emotional skills, including empathy and thinking about what the experience of their fellow family members, classmates, and community members are like. Civic engagement creates many pathways to take that further. How do they go from thinking about, okay, what must it be like to sit in another classmate's shoes, and what can I do to make our school environment or make our community an even healthier, safe, more affirming and belonging place, so that me and my fellow students can thrive, and so that they have that ability to advocate for themselves when they think that, there's a way in which this community could create space that might help me thrive even more. And so love that chance to go from being a spectator of one's community to immediately, you don't have to turn a certain age to become an actor in your community. And I think that's what civic engagement is all about.
Yes, I would add also to the part about it being what makes it essential, right? Because the definition, we can look it up. We already have some ideas. Students already gave us some examples. But the part about it being essential, if you look at history, right, no social justice movement has existed without the influence and the power and the energy and creativity of young people. And so it starts at an early age. If you don't start at an early age, then the idea of civic engagement becomes just voting, right? Like civic engagement only looks like voting. But when you start engaging young people at an early age to think creatively about ways in which they can be involved in their community, take action in their community, not just exist, but be involved, be part of it, be alive in their community, right? That they can think of ways that they can make a change and really make a difference. And I speak from experience as someone who's still not a US citizen, right? If I had not been involved in organizations at an early age that taught me about civic engagement, and I had teachers who supported my civic engagement when I was in high school, I would think that, that's it. My hands are tied. There's nothing I can do because I can't vote. But because I was part of organizations and I had a really supportive group of teachers who created a platform, created a space for me to explore ways to make a difference in my community, I know that there are other things I can do. And again, the students did an excellent job sharing some examples of that: peer education, youth organizing, volunteering your community, registering other people to vote, right? Helping people become citizens who are not citizens yet. There's so many ways to be civically engaged. And again, the part about it being essential is that nothing can happen without, and we know there's so much that needs to happen in our world and in our society that needs changing, right? That needs improving. And so none of those changes can happen without our young people being engaged in their communities.
No, thank you for that, all three of you. You know, some words I jotted down real quick. You know, I heard solutions. I really like collective responsibility. That was a word I heard as well. The idea of developing empathy, right? But you know, the soft skills and everything like that, as well as the clarion call for the idea of young people being involved. And so one thing I just want to mention in terms of the agenda for our attendees is later on near the end, we're going to do an engagement session where we're going to have an interactive whiteboard, and you're going to be able to kind of throw ideas up on a whiteboard and interact with each other. So what we're hoping to do here is kind of give you some grist for the mill, some things to think about, like, oh, what are some things I can contribute? And you'll be able to swap some ideas later. So just to kind of set the stage a little bit for what's coming to our attendees. Okay, so now that we've defined civic engagement and we've talked a little bit about why it's essential, I'll start with you, Elizabeth Clayroy. Sort of in your experience, right? We have teachers, we have educators on this call now. We have you know, nonprofit organizations. What does civic engagement look like in the classroom? What are some of the key characteristics that really make something a true civic engagement project?
Thanks for that question, Graham. So at Generation Citizen, we partner with middle schools and high schools across the country and across New York to bring action civics into the classroom. And you hear it in the name. It is all about connecting the civic skills and knowledge to taking action so that young people are able to practice civic engagement, not only to read about it. And so there are 4 key components of action civics in a project, and we do this with a teacher in a classroom just in one semester. First, you have to have student-led projects. It's not about the teacher saying, here's what you're going to focus on. It has to come from this issue that students identify. Second, real-world community issues. So not something hypothetical, and not something that's going on in another place but doesn't have a connection to students' own lives and students' own community. It has to be relevant to their own lives and to the experiences of their fellow classmates. Third, the project has to create lasting change. So we, as a part of the process, we the students look at something called the hourglass, an advocacy hourglass, where they begin by looking at maybe the surface level issue that they see or that presents. But the curriculum guides them to do a root cause analysis so that they understand what is at the core of that issue, and that's where they seek to make change. So students have an opportunity to really engage in the political process and advocate for something that will make long-term change, not just for a day. And finally, a high-quality action civics project includes reflection at the end on both the impact and approach. So during the project and after the project is complete, students spend time evaluating their effort. And just like all of us do when you're doing a major project, you're looking at the data, you're talking to others, you're making sure that you're being reflective and considering, okay, how do we course correct? How do we get this on track? How do we make sure that we are making impact where we want? And at the end, did we get done what we had hoped to? And if not, what's next for this work? And what I love about it is, while of course this is happening within a school context, and so students are strengthening their critical thinking skills, strengthening their communication skills, and all of the skills that help them become strong and effective researchers and advocates around these issues. They're also really thinking about their increased role of responsibility in their community. As Elizabeth said, that collective responsibility grows as a result of this, no matter what they choose. And so it's not at all surprising that over the 100,000 students who have participated, many of them continue to work on the projects that they identified in their classroom. So happy to share examples in the chat where people can take a look at some of the projects that folks have done. And you'll also hear later in the conversation from a group here in New York City.
I could add a little bit about just the skills building that happens in the process. Elizabeth already shared a little bit of that, but I think just keeping in mind that all students are going to learn through the process. That learning may look a little different for each student, right? So when we think about civic engagement and youth leadership, we may have this idea of a young person speaking on a mic, right? Like rallying people up, and that's great and that's excellent. But we should also acknowledge the students whose leadership may show up in a different way, right? It may be the student who's eager to create a flyer for an event, or the student who wants to reach out to their friends and send text messages, or the student who really knows how to work social media and promote an event or a civic engagement project in that way. So just thinking about what along the process, the skills that they're building, how that empowerment and that leadership development may look different in many different students, right? And also the opportunity to highlight students' different abilities and skills, right? You may have a student who, if they are a multilingual learner or an English language learner, that, during most parts of their education may be brought up as a deficiency, right? But during a civic engagement project, how amazing is it to say, hey, you know what? We actually need someone who speaks Spanish or who speaks Haitian Creole, who speaks Arabic or Bengali to reach out to these communities who we're having a hard time accessing, right? So I just wanted to highlight, one, the skills development, the empowerment, the leadership component, but then also the big opportunity to uplift our young people in the different skills and to acknowledge their lived experience, right? As an addition to civic engagement project that can make it just so much better, right? Like acknowledging that their lived experience as young people from many different backgrounds is actually an asset, and just having that asset-based approach.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that. I love, and I may circle back to this later, this idea I'm seeing in the chat, this idea of like, self-reflection and everything else. So I'm going to maybe circle back to that one in a moment. So, okay, panelists, and, this next question will be for you, Jatna, but of course, anybody else feel free. So, right, I'm a former high school teacher. I can remember some of the challenges in the classroom, right? Standardized tests and everything else. Right. So can you describe a little bit? So what are some of the challenges, right? What are some of the obstacles, roadblocks that, in your experience, teachers can confront? So we'll start by identifying those. And then again, the purpose of this is to inspire and empower. And then maybe we can talk a little bit about how you've seen educators successfully tear those admittedly at times formidable obstacles down. Can you talk a little bit about both challenges as well as opportunities?
Sure. Time, right? Time, competing priorities, standardized testing, sometimes school administration, right? Although sometimes school administration are the ones, really trying to uplift and create spaces for civic engagement, but depending on what school you're at, that may be a challenge. I would say time, competing priorities, such as standardized testing is a big one. Technical difficulties, right? And I think the elephant in the room right now, COVID-19, right, has been such a huge obstacle for pretty much anything that you try to get done in this world today, right? And I think just remembering that this too shall pass, right? This is a stage that our society is facing, but if we put our heads together and do our parts, that too shall pass. I do think that teachers and educators, right? Both teachers in the classroom, and I've seen so many amazing youth educators outside of the classroom in the after school setting and so on, are so resilient, so creative, have so much energy and the right passion and spirit to do this work. And really great also at building community. I think that is the biggest part of this, right? Being resourceful and building community is just what's gonna get you through the day and get you through the school year, and not just get you through, but help you thrive and help you bring amazing opportunities for your students. So, find those communities, not just for creating the civic engagement projects, but let's be real, like, we are still in the middle of a pandemic. People are burning out. There's a great resignation that's really impacting the education sector too. And so taking care of yourself, finding community, and just keep up the good work. All those challenges are real, they're legit. So just take care of yourself and keep going is what I will say.
Yeah, I think Jetna's described just how challenging of a period this is. And we certainly are hearing that from a number of the teachers who we partner with. And I would just underline the point about the pandemic and say that even though it can be even more challenging for teachers to think about bringing something new into their classroom during a time like this, whether that's a virtual or in-person classroom, that the experience that we've heard from teachers who participate in something like an active kind of civic engagement project is that actually can boost engagement. And we heard this from teachers last year, that particularly when students were at home and they might not get a lot of student engagement in some of their other classes, whether that was students turning on the camera, students being, coming to class on a regular basis, but they always saw a higher level of engagement in the Action Civics class. And that's because that felt so student driven. And it created an opportunity for students to talk about some of the stuff that was going on in the world around them that maybe didn't feel like something they could bring into other classes. But the power of, the work that is being described here is it really creates a healthy contextual process for students to navigate all of what's going on around them and bring that into the classroom and leave with a sense of greater purpose and agency and control over what feel during a time that a lot of things don't feel in control. And so, really encouraged by hearing teachers say that, yes, sometimes it's hard to bring something like this in, but the rewards are there. And the last thing I'll say is we had a panel with some teachers who we work with on January 5th, the night before the commemoration of last year's event on January 6th. And knowing what a challenging moment that was for civics and government and social studies teachers. And we had a panel of teachers talk about their experience, and no one was the same. Some of them talked about tears in their classroom, and others talked about a lot of humor. And they were each talking about, okay, how do we navigate knowing our kids and our young people and where they are and how they might be experiencing these events? How do we meet them there and have them leave with a sense of possibility, right? And that what we're going through now, as Jetna said, we're not, this too will pass. And even more so when we are strengthening our democracy at the classroom level, at the community level, and that will build up, we believe, to a stronger democracy for our entire country.
If I could jump in, my fellow panelists said so, Jatna and Elizabeth covered a lot. I do want to underscore a point that Jatna made earlier when it comes to challenges. She talked about the perception of civics being just voting, right? And when we talk about young, and she tied the fact that civic engagement is so essential to the fact that we need to start early, right? And so those things, right, when we talk about younger students being involved, younger students are not eligible to vote yet, and so many others. And so it's really about also broadening the perception of civic engagement. We can start younger, and we should, and we must, for all the points that Elizabeth mentioned. So when we talk about challenges, it's how also are we thinking about engaging students at a younger age and sooner, because it's only going to make us stronger as we move into the different challenges that our communities are facing now and will face in the future.
No, I think that point about voting is a good one. I think for a long time, and I can talk about, very briefly, kind of like my experience as a classroom teacher, like, back then that was kind of like the end goal, right? It was just sort of like, oh, like get out the vote, right? I mean, that was kind of like my social studies instruction that I received when I was learning, to become a teacher. That was kind of like the end goal of civics engagement, right? It was like, oh, have the kids go out and vote. And so what is really refreshing to hear is kind of the tide is turning, that it's much more than that kind of thing. So, and again, we will circle back to that either, with the time we have remaining here, or at the end when we have the opportunity for folks to share on the whiteboard. And so, we've talked about challenges, we've talked about opportunities. I want to give our three panelists the opportunity to talk about their organization and a little bit about how your particular organization, so I'll start with you, Elizabeth. So how does your organization promote civic engagement? And sort of how can folks, connect with you, get involved with you, supports that you can provide to them to get involved in these things?
Yes, thank you for that question and the opportunity to share a little bit more. United Way of New York City is really focused on, we see ourselves as a uniquely positioned between government, private, and nonprofit sector. So really making sure that we are connecting the sectors and working to ensure everyone has a responsibility and it plays a role in promoting civic engagement and staying engaged and involved in the needs across our communities, with this idea that we're all interconnected. And so some of the work that we're doing, in addition to the strategies that we're employing around civic engagement that I'd like to highlight, is also making sure that students see themselves reflected in the leaders that they're learning about. So when we think about civic engagement and how students can show up and the asset-based approach that we mentioned earlier, making sure students see that they have a lot to bring to the table, that they have a lot of knowledge that can inform how we move forward, how we address solutions, how we raise awareness of issues. And so some of the work that we've done, for example, is host a panel for students to see alumni, engaged alumni from HBCUs. And we have a couple of additional engagements that we're planning in the coming year. And so if any educators on the line are interested in getting involved and learning about our upcoming engagements, I'll drop my email in the chat, and happy to get you on our education team's list so you and your students can participate in our upcoming civic engagement opportunities. One that I'll highlight from last year, from 2020 now, and that the Global Kids students talked about, was the 2020 census. So that was a big one where we got not only our students and educators, but also our corporate partners involved. And it was a great opportunity for unlikely partnerships to really come together and folks to work together. So excited to share, and I'll drop my email in the chat for anyone who wants to learn more.
I can go next. So our students did an amazing job speaking a little bit about how we do civic engagement projects, right? So Global Kids works with more than 20 schools throughout the city, all 5 boroughs. And then we also have citywide programs. So students from anywhere, any school in the city can participate in our programs, right? And then we also work in Washington, D.C. Peer education is a big one for us, right? So students are learning and then teaching back to their peers, reaching out to their elected officials. So at least once a year, our students make that phone call, write that email, visit elected officials, their offices, right? And when you tell a young person, yeah, you can pick up the phone and call your elected official, it's like their mind is blown, right? Like it is beyond. So that is a big one for them to, like, helping them know that they can find out who their elected official is, teaching them that they work for them, right? Like, even though you can't vote, like, elected officials work for you and your families and your communities. That is a really powerful moment and a big way to do civic engagement. Learning about elected officials and their platforms, right? Registering people to vote is another big one. The Census Squad was an amazing project to work on. It only comes every 10 years, but it's so important for our young people to know at an early age. Especially for that breakthrough to happen with marginalized communities, right? The point of entry for a lot of marginalized communities is schools and their kids coming home and saying, hey, mom and dad, I think we should do this, right? I think we should, like, recycle, we should fill out the census, we should do this and that. So that was a big one. Youth organizing is one of my favorite ones, and it's how I started becoming civically engaged as a young person. So our Human Rights Activist Project, it's a student, like, all of our programs are student driven, but that is the program where our students get to organize around a campaign of whatever policy issue they want to focus on, because our young people are often left out of those conversations. So creating spaces for young people to be part of those conversations and to not only talk about the issues, but think about the solutions and recommend solutions, bringing them out to rallies and demonstrations. I remember my counselor and my social studies teacher brought me out to demonstrations downtown in the city. I went to school in the Bronx, and it was an amazing opportunity for me. So, make those permission slips. And when there's one out, if parents agree, bring your students out for that experience, right? Because it is, there's something about chanting, what do we want? And just yelling out what you want. That feels really powerful. So I would say that. And then one of our biggest events of the year is the annual Global Kids Youth Conference. So every year for the past 30 plus years, Global Kids has organized a youth conference, totally student-driven. Students research the topic, they write the workshops. So not only they're writing the workshops, they're facilitating the workshops, they're doing student performances. In the before times, before COVID, right, we had like more than 500 kids in attendance from all over the city. The past 2 years, we did that remotely. And this year, we're trying to go back to in-person, even if it's a smaller event. But organizing youth-driven conferences is also a great way. And, I'm talking about a citywide conference, but I've also seen schools, and I have personally supported schools to do it on a small scale in their own schools. And I think that's a really great way to do like a longer, like a few months of a civic engagement project that culminates in a really great event that can engage the entire school community.
And as I shared at the outset, at Generation Citizen, we partner with middle schools and high schools in communities across the country, including here in New York. And we would be excited to partner with any school districts, principals, and middle and high school teachers in government or social studies who are interested in bringing Generation Citizen into your classroom next year. And what does that look like? It is a combination of both a curriculum that supports and connects to the curriculum that you're offering for one semester, either fall or spring, and professional development for the teacher who will be delivering that curriculum, and a chance to really be a part of a community of practice. I'm incredibly proud that as an organization, we have both a teacher leadership board that informs our work, as well as a number of ways that we listen to students and alumni to continue strengthening our work. And one of the things that we have really grown in, we've been around for about 12 years, but just last year really completed the most significant revision of our curriculum to more directly center racial equity and ensure that we are in our conversation about supporting civic engagement, are ensuring that we are connecting to the strength of our diverse civic traditions in this country. And that includes diversity in terms of the different parts of our country that have all of the different ways in which they have brought the power of the people to inform the strength of their communities and to challenge systems to make this a stronger and better democracy, because we know that inspires our young people to see themselves in their civic history and then see themselves as building our new civic future. And that's so much of what we need. So we'd be excited we're engaging new partners for next fall, and I can add my email to the chat as well so folks can be in touch. My colleague Carolyn O'Neill is also on the call, will be on all day. So definitely get in touch with Carolyn or me.
So thank y'all. So as I look at the clock and see that we're sort of right at 10:45, which was time, I'm reflecting now in the space of a half an hour, right? We have talked about almost the existential, reasons and justifications for why this is important. We've touched on some very practical, pedagogical strategies and everything else, right? And then we've also looked at some challenges. We tried to tear those down. And when I think about sort of how much we've done in just a half an hour, right, I think it's truly remarkable. And it's a testament to the wonderful work that our three partner organizations here that are doing to be able to speak about these things, so so eloquently and really provide that grist for the mill. So again, I really would like to thank Elizabeth Clay-Roy, Elizabeth Angeles, and Jatna Ramirez for sharing your expertise with us today about civic engagement. You've given us so much to think about, so much to chew on. And I'm really, really excited about between seeing the student presentations. We've seen one, we're going to see another. We're going to hear from some educators themselves in a moment, to have the opportunity as well for people to share what they've learned. I can't thank the three of you enough for coming and joining us today. So thank the three of you so much.
Thank you so much.
And so they have, thrown their information in the chat, so you'll be able to contact them. Their names are on the agenda as well. So, Google to your heart's content. And so what's going to happen next is we're going to take a very brief break. So this is a good opportunity for everybody attending to, go get some coffee real quick, anything like that, eliminate some of that Zoom fatigue, right? So we're going to take a 10-minute break. We're going to come back at 10:55. And from there, we're going to hear some teacher presentations, right? So we've talked a little bit about challenges and opportunities. You're going to hear from 3 educators at various levels who have all successfully done civic engagement projects in their classroom, so that you can see what these things are like, what this looks like in the classroom. And again, provide some food for thought so that when we get to our engagement session a little later, you'll have some things to be able to think about. Right? So by my computer, it is 10:46. We will see you back here at 10:55 for the next section of the presentation. Thank you.
Hello, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully everybody had a chance to get their second cup of coffee. We're extremely excited to start the second half of the event this morning. So a couple of things before I kick it off, to review over some of the Zoom information. We are monitoring the chat the entire morning. So if you have any questions or if you are experiencing any technology issues, please feel free to leave that information in the chat and we'll get to you. You can also customize your view by clicking on the view icon on the top right of your screen. The recommended view for this program are the gallery view or the side-by-side speaker. You can also hide non-video participants as well. We have Adrian Adamo right now as our ASL interpreter. If you would like to follow along more closely, you can click on the More button, which is a 3-dot next to her video, and you can pin her video next to the speaker. And of course, additionally, our closed captioning is right below, and you can click on the closed captioning icon. For the next section, we are very excited to be hearing from educators that are in the school. We'll be hearing from Winston Preparatory School, Borough of Manhattan Community College, as well as PS60. So without further ado, Daniel, go ahead.
All right. So let me get my presentation here. All right, so hey, everybody, I'm Daniel Roeder. I'm a math teacher at the New York campus of Winston Prep, which is a school that specializes in serving students with learning disabilities. And I'm going to be presenting today on the charity election that I ran through the Giving What We Can nonprofit. So first off, what is Giving What We Can? Well, they're a nonprofit who considers themselves to be a community of effective givers. So when we think about philanthropy, a lot of times, as long as you're raising money for a good cause, you're doing a good job, which is certainly true. But what Giving What We Can does is takes that to the next level by using research and analytical methods to determine what is the best possible way to do the most good per dollar. And through that lens, their mission is to inspire donations to the world's most effective organizations. Now, the charity election grant that we received was an opportunity for our students to vote for one of 3 charities to then disperse the grant funds we received from Giving What We Can to the second place and the third place charity. So not only was that a way to directly allocate funds to particularly impactful organizations, but it was also designed to inspire meaningful discussions between our students and to empower them to find a voice and an understanding of some of the globe's and world's most complex social issues right now. Now, the grant was organized in order to incentivize student participation. So for every vote we got, $2 was allocated to the ultimate total that we were then dispersing to these charities. And while that might not seem like a lot, by the end of the presentation, when I show the results, I think it'll show you just how powerful effective altruism as a concept is when it comes to driving impact with any amount of money, but even a relatively small amount given to how much sometimes you could see donated. Now, the winning charity received 75%, second place was 20%, and the third place charity also received 5% of our total grant pool. Now, as I mentioned, this whole model is really built to incentivize student engagement. So how did we get our kids interested? First off, obviously being fairly organized through a remote setting, both last year and even continuing into this year, my student leadership panel actually put together a Google Classroom page. So just like all our students at the school have Google Classroom pages for their actual classes, we created one to organize all of the documents and all of the information relating to the charity election. And so not only was this available to all the students in the school, but it also gave my student leadership team, who helped me put on the entire charity election, the opportunity to take on a leadership and operational role that really drove the charity election forward. Additionally, to inspire interest, we have weekly emails that go home. And so both to our students, but also to our parents, really for the whole month leading up to the charity election, there was no way to miss that this was going on. And we really wanted to make sure to drive that student engagement in order to maximize how much money would ultimately be donated to all of the charities. And then lastly, one unique dynamic of our school is that our students are able to spend one-on-one time with a particular teacher, which is called their focus teacher, each day. And so one of the ideas my student leadership panel came up with is that if we got our focus teachers on board in terms of helping to facilitate the voting process, then that would be that much more likely to maximize the votes, because students would be engaging in this one-on-one with the teacher and ultimately put their vote in there. So what you see on the right is actually a document we put together to explain very clearly what was going on, what the students' roles were, what their options were, and then how they could actually go about voting. So now, who were the three charities that our students got to choose and vote for? First is Project Healthy Children, which provides children with basic nutritional support. Unfortunately, micronutrient deficiencies are one of the leading causes of intellectual disabilities. And the way Project Healthy Children combats this is they actually have technology and solutions to directly input the most important nutrients into food that communities are already eating, which may not have the nutrients, but once Project Healthy Children can use some of their technology and their approaches to supplement that food, the rate of malnourishment drastically decreases. The second option is called the GiveWell Maximum Impact Fund. So unlike Project Healthy Children, which is its own nonprofit altogether, what the GiveWell Maximum Impact Fund does is similar to Giving What We Can. They're an effective altruist organization. So they receive donations, they pool them together, and then they have researchers deciding on a quarterly basis each year what the most impactful charity is that they could donate their funds to. And two recent examples of this is the Helen Keller International nonprofit, which, similar to Project Healthy Children, focuses on getting micronutrients to at-need communities. And then secondly, the Against Malaria Fund, which is well known to be one of the most impactful charities, and that for every roughly $2,500 to $3,000 they get in donations, they have documented that they can literally save someone's life. And this fund in particular has seen a lot of growth of late. When they first started, they were really only donating about $100,000 per quarter. And as effective altruism has grown in popularity, they're now donating about $25 million per quarter to different charities. The last option our students had was the Humane League. And their mission is to end the abuse of animals that are raised for food through advocacy at institutional and individual levels. So this is actually a very big area in effective altruist communities as far as animal abuse and animal rights, just because the sheer number of animals that we as a global community take in each year and raise as livestock is so significant that when you think about reducing global suffering as a whole, the animal perspective is hard to miss. So those were the three options that our students had to vote for. Now, giving what we can was a really big help in terms of facilitating the whole election process. And one thing that was cool that they did in addition to the vote is there was a survey students did. And so what you see here is a word cloud of some of the most important issues students took away once they learned about the charities that were their options and made their vote. A couple things that stuck out to me was obviously the way a number like world hunger or poverty or important issues just as a whole stuck out because those were what our charities were allocated around. But even the way it caused students to engage with some of our most pressing issues here in America, like racism, or even just people as a whole. I thought that was pretty powerful to see because civics really comes down to people helping people. So I loved how these big issues made our students really think about big topics. Now, over 80% of our student body voted, which I think was obviously bolstered by the fact that we were able to facilitate part of the voting process, but it was also really powerful to see because I know in going back and forth with giving what we can as a whole, that was a pretty high number relative to what some of the other schools were able to get in terms of complete student participation. So some other data we collected was what students found most interesting as far as like civic engagement perspectives went in the voting process. Making a positive impact was something that over 90% of our kids who voted felt they were empowered by. Over 95% felt they voted for a cause that was important to them. And what I thought was cool is you also see they thought critically and discussed important issues. So not only was there the kind of emotional side, which kind of goes with the term altruism, but also the effective side in terms of thinking critically and having concrete discussions to facilitate that critical thinking interpersonally across our students. It's another chart looking at how students measured the importance they got from this process. And again, thinking critically, thinking creatively, the kind of intellectual side of this initiative being integrated with the more emotional side of being compassionate and making the world a better place. That's really what effective altruism is all about. So I was really empowered to see so many of our students pick up on that and feel similarly and feel empowered by being able to take part in this process. What was also great is it's one thing to raise some money and have one cool event, but so many of our students also felt interested in continued engagement with either a related charity election next year, taking on a leadership role to facilitate, whether it's through a similar organization or other effective altruistic organizations. Participating in a student club was a high number. So to see that this not only generated engagement in the moment, but is also going to lead to continued engagement was really inspiring for me. And I think what civic engagement is all about. So here are just a couple more data points that I already spoke to. Students felt purposeful and inspired by their action, and over 95% of the students who voted really chose a cause they personally cared for, even though they didn't choose what they got to vote on. They just choose what they voted on. But by learning about the powerful work these charities were doing, by the time they voted, they felt inspired to be donating money to the cause they chose. Now, our election results, finally, we see Project Healthy Children came out on top with just about 50%. The Humane League came in second, and the Maximum Impact Fund came in third, which I thought actually made a lot of sense. As far as kind of valuing human lives, especially for our kids, seeing that Project Healthy Children was helping kids, I thought that was fairly fitting in terms of their hearts and minds being drawn to that. And then secondly, also seeing the Maximum Impact Fund come in at the bottom. I know when I presented these charities to a lot of our students, they were a little confused, like, why am I giving money to someone else to give money? And the kind of separation that that fund represents in terms of directly funneling funds seemed to create a little hesitation as opposed to just directly donating and feel like you're having an immediate impact. And going back to just the power of effective altruism. So we had 187 kids vote, which again was over 80% of our students. And so with that, roughly 390, or with the $394 we raised doing that, we are actually able to have now provided 528 people with food-based micronutrient fortification for 1 year. So that just goes to show you how powerful effective altruism is when it comes to driving the most impact for each dollar of philanthropy donated. So that's my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm going to be looking at the chat, but you can also feel free to shoot me a note if you want to discuss the my charity election further, or even if you'd be interested in trying to run this at your school. I'd love to connect and see how I could be of help in terms of getting you set up with giving what we can. So thank you so much for your time and the opportunity to present on this.
Hi there, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm Shane Snipes here from the Borough Manhattan Community College. We were told to create this Pekka Kucha style, so I'm excited to actually do that. 20 seconds per 20 slides, and it's going to be a fast-paced, exciting presentation. So here we go. All right, guys, so thank you so much. You can see here the Citizen Entrepreneur Explorers program has brought in some partners because we've been asked to expand the program, which allows students to get out there and discover entrepreneurship within their neighborhoods at a very local level. This kind of local interaction is one of the components that we feel is important. And we actually believe that business discovery should be community first learning. And that just means that we're going to connect students to their actual businesses at the neighborhood or block level. And we want to think about it in terms of civic impact and what that looks like and how we can expand it. So at BMCC, we have an entrepreneurship degree program, but we also have a Blackstone Launchpad, which provides a space for anyone who wants to study and understand entrepreneurship from any major. And then CEEP is connected to that. And CEEP is short for our Citizen Entrepreneur Explorers program. Inside of CEEP, it teaches research skills to use in many aspects of life. The life skills component of what CEEP is all about is pretty special because we not only teach them research skills, but they're allowed to engage directly with their neighborhood and discover new things. It also provides them a chance to connect to their neighborhood with one-on-one discussions, or oftentimes one-on a large group, which could be a church, or it could be the community boards that they actually live and oftentimes are working in that same neighborhood. The other thing it does, it creates social impact, because the students' research isn't just them going out studying something, creating a project, and then putting that project folder on a shelf. It lets them interact directly back and deliver that research that they discovered. One example of that, which I love to show, is Janae. She was one of the first people to explore what it was like. Her question was, are you aware of homeless people in the community? And if so, do you believe that businesses have an obligation to give back to that community? So we took and she explored and she gathered information from the businesses and from consumers. What she found is that consumers said 88% were aware of homelessness. Of that 88%, 55 of them believed there was no obligation for the businesses to give back. So 45% thought there was, about a 50-50 split. Something else really interesting was uncovered through her research. She also found that the community organizations that she delivered this information to were actually quite shocked. They thought that all businesses thought that this was important. And one of the things that was in the results was the businesses themselves believed there was no reason at all for them to be giving back. And another component of this is Once she heard that, and the people in the community were asking, well, what should the businesses actually do to provide an opportunity for an interaction? She offered they could give the food that is expiring. They could connect to students and offer internships. There were all these ways that they could connect to the neighborhood. The steps to SEEP are: find a research question, decide how to gather that data, gather the data, review it, and then most importantly, report it back to the community so that the community can discover and interact with that information. The other part of SEEP is within each of these steps, there are 4 parts. Is it purposeful? Is it relevant? Is it bold? And is it personal? And so if you have to ask those questions for each of these steps, what you end up with is a pretty dynamic and deep discovery that the student uncovers about themselves and about the neighborhoods. This is what that looks like with just a few of the questions. How is the research question addressing a current community need? And then if you're doing your assessment, how did you use new or creative assessment options in your research? And then lastly, how can you take this understanding that you've gathered and actually present it back in your own career? Another example is Shayla, and she came up with how many retailers on 18th Avenue in Brooklyn carry 100% vegan and hypoallergenic products. She herself wants to create her own beauty line, and so she had 2 reasons for doing this type of research. What she discovered was that there is information out there, when she gathered all this information about the stores, that people should know about. The neighbors should know if they have skin issues, these are the locations that they can get that. And then the community organization that she talked to actually said, this research really is quite powerful. You should make sure it gets out there. If you look at it then as the way it's structured, what we actually have is the community, a question, the discovery process, and then impact. And then it goes all the way back down again, because each question can be asked by multiple communities all around the country or all around the world. So this is an opportunity to build on research. There is impact that we're measuring, and that is entrepreneurial self-efficacy increased. The relevancy as far as what community leaders thought of the research was there. And then of course, the student research inclination increased. So now they're actually interested in research themed careers. The last example I want to give you is the Harlem community view on gentrification. Taylor was very interested in gentrification, and I'll just highlight the one question. Restaurants and bars should give back to the community. Look at that percentage. A huge number of the people in that community actually do believe in the give back process. So he shared that with his church, which is one of the places where he was mentored as a youth. So he went back there and shared this. And the minister was like, this is fantastic. We should share this more often. Let's find a middle ground in which we can all take care of one another, even as things progress. So those types of discoveries were really eye-opening for the students. I want to thank you personally for taking the time to discover about Citizenpreneurs and Citizen Entrepreneur Explorers program. Thank you, Kaufman, for continuing to help expand this program, what we hope to be all around the world. And I appreciate your time. Everyone, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. It's been great.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Daniel and Shane, for sharing your journeys. They're very inspiring for what you're doing with your audience. I am Chrissy Vigliotti. I'm one of the proud assistant principals of PS 16 in Staten Island, New York. And I am joined by my partner in crime, Miss Hillary Spitaleri, who is our library media specialist and who helped me go on this journey with our babies where we combated bullying. So Hillary's going to share her screen, and we're going to share our journey with Hat Not Hate and how we made our babies here at PS 16, which is a K-5 school, become agents of change and find their voice.
Greetings from PS16, located in Staten Island, New York, District 30. We are a school that educates and loves the head, heart, and soul of over 430 of the most adorable students, our babies as we like to call them, in all of New York City. I am Christy Vigliotti, one of the proud assistant principals of PS16, and I work with Hillary Spitaleri, our library media specialist. We would like to take this opportunity to share our journey as to how one little email propelled our school into becoming agents of change to stand up to bullying and finding our own voices. This is our team, our principal, Ms. Ramos, Ms. Warsdale, and myself. I will explain the blue hats real soon. In August of 2019, my principal received an email from the superintendent's office asking if any school was interested in teaming up with Hat Not Hate for October, which is National Bullying Prevention Month. In particular, setting up something special for the National Stop Bullying Day, which occurs on the second Wednesday in October. Ms. Ramos, who is a champion for all students, jumped at the opportunity and we got right to work. First, we needed to define bullying and use the power of storytelling to share our own childhood stories involving bullying. This was a powerful team building exercise because it allowed us to be vulnerable and share our past and how we overcame these adversities. This created a safe space for us to help heal and also helped us to cultivate coping strategies to support our babies who might be facing similar situations. We live in a data-driven world, and in order to get staff buy-in and raise awareness, we shared some alarming statistics with our SEL and crisis team during our first few meetings back in September. It was really alarming to us when we looked at that data around bullying, especially when we saw that 77% of students have been bullied mentally, verbally, and physically, and that cyberbullying statistics were rapidly approaching similar numbers. After gathering research, creating the team, and planning a huge welcome back to school pep rally, we realized that we needed to partner with a professional bully buster. I turned to YouTube and a video popped up about an organization titled Hat Not Hate. I was floored at what Shira Blumenthal was doing with her blue hats in schools, and I knew I needed to reach out to her. I instantly Googled her, and the next thing I knew, we were on the phone for over an hour sharing our stories. I was certain that Shira and her team were the ones we needed to partner with, and that is when the magic happened. And then the blue yarn started pouring in. We received boxes of it. Shira shared her story with our student council and how she overcame bullying, and what a beautiful story it was in overcoming adversity. You could hear a pin drop as she told her story from her childhood. The students were captivated, as were the adults. We all saw a piece of ourselves in Shira's story. Finally, it was time to kick off our Hat Not Hate Assembly on the second Wednesday of October. And boy, did Shira deliver. She delivered all the hats. We had a hat for every staff member and student in the building. It was a sea of blue, and it was just incredible. We had music, games, dancing, and lots of participation from the students. This was by far one of the best assemblies we have ever had. After 2 long years, we realized that COVID couldn't keep us away. Shira came back this year to talk to a whole new group of students who have been through so much during the pandemic. This was our first in-person assembly in 2 years, and it was simply amazing. We were even featured in our local newspaper, which was really exciting for our babies and school community. Our first experience with Shira had such an impact on us and our school that we wanted to share it with all of you. Please watch this video and become inspired just as we were.
We are at PS16 in Staten Island, New York, and we have delivered over 500 hats to this amazing school.
We have such an awesome responsibility to ensure that our babies not only leave us strong and proficient in reading, writing, and math, but they also leave us as good human beings.
Hat Not Hate, it gives you something to look forward to if you feel like you're being bullied. So I think it's really kind of cool to have something to be positive.
I love the hashtag, and I think that silent E can change so much. It's so big. Like, it can change a word, it can change a meaning, but it can make such a difference.
I think that they are going to feel confident to stand up to bullying, to, if they see somebody's being picked on, that they're going to be there for them, whether it be to go tell an adult or to be there to try to boost their morale. I think that they're going to know that they're leaders and that they have the power.
Whoever chooses to wear the hat feels like more than like they're powerful. If everyone does this, maybe we could stop bullying. It means we can stop bullying altogether with the people who have the hats on. Even if they don't have hats, they can help stop bullying.
For me, it means unity, coming together, recognizing that we're all different, but yet all the same.
It's an honor to wear this hat. I love the hashtag hat and I hate. I love that someone would ask me, why are you wearing a blue hat? And then I could share that message.
I think a hat means so much more than just something to wear on their head. I think it's something that is so symbolic to them that they're going to go right back to this day and think about how they were an agent of change and how our student council led this crusade of justice and having courage and being brave, right? Because we want to raise our kids to be brave and stand up for what's right.
Every student, teacher, employee of this school received a hat today, and holy smokes, all the dreams. It was pretty cool seeing everyone in their blue hat today.
We hope we've inspired all of you to continue to be agents of change and join us in the fight against bullying.
Thank you so much to our 3 teacher presenters. We've had from different sort of grade levels and different approaches to civic engagement. But the one thing that you've seen that's kind of all in common, right, is getting students involved, right? Having them become involved in their community. And so as we sort of reflect on everything that we've seen so far, right? Like I mentioned, we've seen a student presentation. We've had a panel of experts talk about the pedagogical challenges and opportunities that civic engagement provides. We've heard from, your fellow educators who have done this in the past. We want to give you an opportunity now to share. We wish we were in the class. We wish we were all together and we could do this around tables with crayons and everything else. But unfortunately, we're having to do this over Zoom, but we were trying to think of a way to get y'all interacting with each other. So what we are going to do is we're going to do an interactive whiteboard. I am going to pull up and share my screen. And so hopefully you can see it. And so what is going to happen is in a moment, my colleague Tess is going to drop a link in the chat. And we are going to encourage you to join us at this whiteboard for you to be able to share resources and ideas with us. So I'm going to do a very brief demo before you jump in. Okay. Once you get into the whiteboard, you will click on the link. The way it will work is all you have to do is double click and you open up a little Post-it note. And then you'll type your idea. So for example, how does your theme fit in the curriculum? So you might type something like, this involves government and I teach government, right? There's something like that, right? So you'll type that in and then you can drop it in each one of the little boxes, right? So how does this fit in your curriculum? We have, what is the civics action that you want students to do? We have a box for resources to share. So if you have links or ideas or organizations that you've worked with, we have potential pitfalls and challenges. You can share sort of opportunities for that. And then as well, if you feel like suggesting a theme, suggesting how it fits in the curriculum, as well as a civics action, we would love to populate this with ideas. Because what's going to happen is we're going to be able to take a snapshot of this. We're going to be able to email everybody. And then you'll have some framework, some grist for the mill to be able to begin to think about your own civic engagement project. So I believe that Tess has indeed, they've thrown the link in the chat. Thank you. And I see people are already starting to kind of poke around. So again, I encourage you to come on in. The way you get a sticky note is you just double click, just like that. And then you start typing and you put that wherever it's appropriate. And I'm going to put up a timer. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to hopefully populate this mural with ideas and thoughts. So we're going to do about 5 minutes for people to just kind of throw their ideas in there. So again, feel free to double click, to throw some ideas in there if you want. You've seen some opportunities. Again, type whatever it is you want, drag it in. We can make them bigger or smaller. this is an opportunity for you to get involved and for you to share some ideas based on what you've learned today. And we're going to be able to zoom in. So it's okay if it's small. It's okay if it's big. You can drag it around. You can move it wherever you want. But I'm going to give people a few moments to begin thinking about ideas.
The link is in the chat, so feel free to copy and paste, or you can directly click on it. If you're having any issues getting in, you can also try a different browser.
Again, feel free to riff off each other. So for example, I see testing your water for lead. So I put in the theme environmental science, right? So yeah, I see somebody moving the testing water for lead is what students will do, right? So then how does that fit in your curriculum? I'm going to throw an idea in there. I'm going to say testing hypotheses. Because testing your water for lead is a good way in a science class for you to test hypotheses. So again, feel free to riff off of each other as well and add your own thoughts and your own ideas. And you can control your own screen. I know some of you may be looking at mine. I'm going to throw something in here, potential pitfalls and challenges. Standardized testing. That was something that was mentioned earlier, right? Resources. We've heard from Global Kids. That's a resource. Project Citizen. The United Way of New York City. So right off the bat, we have three resources to share. If you have some pitfalls and challenges, maybe something that we've talked about before or something new, feel free to throw it in there. Whoops. Accidentally moved one of the boxes. Sorry about that. Again, we're looking for as many ideas as we can. We'll add another minute just to give people time. And let's put into practice what we've learned a little bit. About 1 minute left. We encourage everybody to jump in here, throw in some ideas from what we've been talking about. 30 seconds left. If anybody has any more ideas. And that's time. There we go. The airplane has arrived. So we'll do a little bit of a debrief here based on what folks have been able to populate. Again, this is something that we're going to be able to take a snapshot of. We're going to be able to send this out to folks so that you'll begin to kind of think about and maybe use this to help you jumpstart some ideas as well. So the first thing that I'm going to focus in on, and I'm going to kind of zoom us in a little bit here on this particular sticky note. And so I'm going to summon everybody to this particular section, is this idea of where it fits in the curriculum, right? This idea of geography or history. That was one of the things that I really liked hearing from our panel of experts before, is one of the things they really emphasized is the interdisciplinary nature of civic engagement, right? This idea that it can cut across multiple things, so that whether you're a science teacher, whether you're a math teacher, no matter what it is that you're teaching, there's a way to integrate what it is you're doing into the curriculum. And so, obviously civic engagement kind of naturally, your mind immediately goes to things like, government, right? Or a civics class. Well, it turns out that geography and history are filled with examples of ways that students can get involved with civic engagement. For example, one of the things that we have at the New York Fed is we have a lesson plan about redlining, right? Which was this practice of banks not lending to particular groups, right? And that has really shaped where people live in their communities today. That is both a geography issue as well as a history issue, right? So if you're teaching geography or history, there is a way to integrate civic engagement and civic understanding into your curriculum with something like that. So I'm going to throw it over to Tess. Tess, was there anything that kind of jumped out at you as you look through here?
Yeah, I think I quite like the first role, especially when someone threw in, oops, I do not want to create a new box, is if you scroll down a little bit, Graham, is that what is that civics action that the students will do? And I quite like that box because it lists out 3 different ideas, right? It doesn't have to be just one. And it's to create a composting bin at home. I love that one, given that food education, I think, is such a key in a lot of schools that are just not covered. And most of the time it might perhaps is covered after school. Repurposing an item you would traditionally throw out, right? So practicing recycling at home and having your community as well as maybe your family involved in that. So you're starting a new routine. Those are sort of more civic engaged stuff that you can do on a daily basis, right? And the last thing is donate at least 3 things you do not use anymore instead of throwing them away. And that is sort of more on the mindset aspect, right? Of changing what we think about how we are using things and consuming things on a daily basis. And this is all related to global awareness, participation. You can possibly even tie this to global warming, right? Because everything here plays a role in that. Oops, Graham, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. One of the things that jumped out to me, as kind of I looked at these things, I really liked over here in the pitfalls and challenges, right? We've got a couple things. I'm gonna kind of zoom us in here and call everybody over here. This idea of parents buy-in, right? I think this is something really interesting, and this is something that our panel of experts brought up before, is that idea of how is it that we can kind of get parents to buy in and see that this is something important, to see that this is something that they should be doing in their community. And so not only do you have that kind of high level piece of parents buy-in, you also, the one right next to it, right, is thinking about this idea of just the nitty gritty of collecting the order forms, the student forms, the parent forms, right? All of those logistical pieces present tremendous challenges to this, right? Those are things that teachers have to consider. But one of the things you heard before from our panelists, as well as the examples that you've seen from our educators, is that these things can be overcome, right? If you're able to get the students to buy in because they see that it's local, because they see that it's relevant, because they see that it's engaging, one of the goals is to hopefully have that kind of trickle down to the parents or trickle up to the parents, depending on which way you want to put the flow of causality, to be able to have them kind of get involved. And if any of you have some ideas about how that might look or some strategies, I'd love for you to create a little Post-it note and throw it in here as well. If you've had some success in doing something like that, please throw a Post-it note, into this section so that we can share some ideas about how do you get parents to buy in, right? Because I don't just want to leave this hanging there. That's a very real issue. So if any of you have experience with that, please chime in, throw a Post-it note over here, because we would love to discuss that. The last thing that I'll kind of mention before I throw it back to you, Tess, for another consideration, is this idea of not encouraging student feedback or student-led activities, right? That was something that we've seen and heard over and over and over again, is that it needs to be student-driven, right? So one of the challenges for this is this idea of providing feedback, right? Students need to be able to hear from you. They need to be able to hear from their peers. They need to be engaged in it. And that can be challenging, right? Getting students involved, having them provide feedback to each other, that's hard. That's something you have to bake into the classroom. That's a mindset you have to bake in very, very early. But it can be incredibly worth it if you're able to pull it off. So that's another very, very good challenge. Tess, anything jumped out at you?
I think perhaps we want to make sure that I highlight the top part, which is going to be our resources to share today, because we want to make sure that everyone that attends today's session can walk away with some new tools, some new connections. So we have of course, our panelists that was earlier in the morning share their full names as well as organization names as well upstairs. So please feel free to add them, connect with them. Emails have been dropped as well in the chat. So please, again, feel free to connect with them and learn more about their organization and what they do, as well as check out their website. These are, again, great places. We hope that also throughout the day, you are also connecting with other colleagues, as well as our educators that just presented today, to make sure that you are connecting and building network as well.
Great. The last thing that I kind of want to mention as well, and this goes, again, we'll kind of, whoops, I didn't mean to create a sticky note there. This idea of, thinking about it interdisciplinary, I wanted to kind of highlight these two sections right here. This idea of environmental science, right? And again, there's this idea that, that civic engagement, that it just kind of checks one box or one bucket when it comes to the disciplines. But actually, as you're going to see in a few moments, right, this idea of having students, test their water supply, obviously that's a civic engagement component, right? But then there's a whole other things that are baked into it that our students are going to share, right? This idea of testing hypotheses, this idea of working together, right? These soft skills are transferable across all of the other disciplines. And that is going to allow you to not just help your students within your social studies classroom, which is maybe where this traditionally lives, but it's also going to help your science teacher, right? Because your students are going to come to their classroom and they're going to say, biology teacher, we just spent the entire civics class testing a hypothesis, right? You're building on the foundations that all of the other teachers throughout your building are doing. And then you're also, and this is something our panelists brought up as a lot, was this idea of developing soft skills, right? This idea of working together, this idea of developing confidence, this idea of, outreach. Those are things that you're going to use and that your students are going to be able to use in every career, right? No matter what it is they do, the idea of them getting their voice. I see over here this idea of attending marches, right? Hyper local engagement. I love this, right? Getting students to talk about neighbors. Those are transferable skills that students are going to be able to use regardless. So I think, just to kind of wrap it up, because this is a great way to transition to our students, when you think about the very real realities about, standardized testing and about the curriculum, right? Where does it fit? One of the very, very powerful arguments that you're going to have is that actually when students are doing these things, they're hitting a wide variety of objectives. They're hitting content objectives. They're hitting skill objectives. They're hitting literacy objectives. So by doing one civic engagement process or project, on the surface, it might look like, oh, my students are just learning about federalism. And that's like 3 objectives. In actuality, what you and your students are doing is you're hitting tons of different objectives. You're covering a wide swath of the curriculum, and you're doing it in a way that is meaningful and that is impactful, right? And so that's the legacy that we really want to leave you. And we want to thank all of you who kind of engaged with us here a little bit and the opportunity to kind of share your experiences and your thoughts. What we're going to do is we're going to take a snapshot of this, and we're going to be able to send this to you as part of the project materials and as part of the convening materials at the end of this session, okay? But with that in mind, I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I would like to throw it over to some students from Union Square Academy who are going to talk about their civic engagement project. Take it away.
Hi.
I'm David Edelman. I have the pleasure of being the teacher for 4 lovely students who will probably be joining us on camera any second now. That is Saga, Enrique, Yohani, and Melissa. Here they appear. My role will be very limited. I will be sharing their presentation. I just put a link into the chat, and I encourage you to open it. There's lots of videos. There's meaningful links as well for you to gain access to sites that will allow you to test your water at home for free, something that we're going to be talking about today. So without further ado, let's see, is Saga on? I see Melissa's lovely face. I see Yohani's lovely face. So I'm going to get situated with sharing our presentation. That's going to be my role. There's Saga. Hello, Saga. And Enrique, here we are. Okay, just give me a second to share, and then Saga, you're going to lead us off with our first section.
Hello everyone, I'm Saga, and today we're going to be presenting for PPB in our faucets. So what's the problem? Our schools tested positive for highly elevated lead levels in 2017. Students didn't use the old faucets and often lacked access to H2O. In 2017, due to the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, New York State began requiring schools to test faucets for lead. Many faucets across the state tested positive. And as you can see, some of the faucets tested at elevated levels above the EPA action level of 15 ppb. In the gymnasium, it had 234 ppb, office 159 ppb, girls' bathroom over 1,700 ppb. The hallway had over 1,100 ppb, and the office had 24 ppb. Here are the sources of lead in drinking water. Most of them come from pipelines, copper pipe with lead solder, faucets, and galvanized pipe, all from a water meter.
One of the things that we did early on was we looked up our service line. That's something that you could do as well. There might be information provided by the city, there might not be. We determined that wasn't the problem of the lead, was our water service line, but it was probably from other sources within our building.
Yeah. The exposure to lead could lead to serious health problems in children's health. It could damage the brain and nervous system. There's slow growth and development, learning and behavior problems, hearing and speech problems. So this often can cause lower IQ, decreased ability to pay attention, and underperformance in school. For example, Freddie Gray was found to be have lead poison in his system, as well as his two sisters. And this affects mostly Hispanics and Black people, people of color.
Enrique.
Hi. Sorry, I was doing something. So what we learned, hold up, this thing is in my way. Okay, so students from the Heinrich Zill School in Radeberg, Germany visited in February 2020 prior to school closure and participated in our classroom caucuses. Students discussed community problems and solutions. So we collaborated with a few students from Germany in, we collaborated with a few students from Germany I'm not having a good time right now. Hold up.
Enrique, you're good, right?
Okay,
So this was a long ongoing collaboration. This was something that happened before the pandemic. And now you'll talk a little bit about our most recent collaboration this year.
Okay, so we learned more about each other's water and we collaborated on the report in the video, which we will not be watching because it takes too much time. So in December of 2021, which was the recent collaboration, we collaborated with German students from the Bronx-Berlin connection. We created raps, dances, and logos to support our activism to improve access to clean lead-free drinking water. In this case, we created logos for our new bottles that have not came just yet, I believe. We created a rap, which I was a part of, and it was very inspirational, and dances to give more support for the activism.
Okay, so my name is Yohani. I'm also a student from Union Square Academy, and here's some things we did about like the problem. So in 2019, we began with generating proposals on how to use our funds to better our school community and conduct a school-wide election and use the funds to get new environmentally fountains with water filters. And I currently use that water to refill my water bottle from time to time in school. All right. So there wasn't a Google Maps created for this, but we designed one ourselves, and it shows every public school in New York City and their water test results. The red in the maps means that it has a lot of ppb, that the lead was tested above 15 parts per billion, and it's the poverty index data is integrated with that as well. Okay. So this is a video of basically how to test your water when you do ask for your lab test results. So students and staff at Union Square Academy for Health Sciences, we have tested their water at home to ensure it's safe and lead-free using a free New York City provided lead test kit. And recently I found out you can request your water no matter where you're from. Specifically me, I did test it in Westchester County because I was struggling trying to get it from New York City. And I actually still got my lead filter results. It looks a little different, the bottle, but like I still got it done. And it was pretty cool to know that.
So I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Johanny. So there's a separate site and link if you live in New York City, but it's a statewide initiative. So you can also test your
Anybody
water
can-
if you're a New Yorker, but you live outside the city.
Right. Okay, and then here are some students in school that are testing water samples for bacteria, pesticides, heavy metals, hardness, and pH levels. We compared those results to that done by professional testing services. So we have like water, we can test the water with like lead strips, and like it tests like everything in it. And yeah. All right, and that's me. I'm testing right here. We were testing like our walls to see if there was lead in the walls. So that means including pipes, paints, faucets at the school, and at home for lead to draw attention to the presence of lead in our environment. So I tested my walls in my house and like around pipes, and thankfully there was no lead there. But like, and usually if you do it in any old buildings, you'll find lead. So yeah.
Hi, my name is Melissa, and how are we advocating for reform? So, number one, we're increasing public spending for water filters and new water filters. Require that all testing data for public drinking water be published, not just the data for the faucets, and test above the EPA standards for 15 ppb. Number three, share the number of filters, fountains, and communicate how the number of faucets has changed as a result of lead remediation efforts. Number four, lower the action levels to 5 BP in public schools. And this bill is on the government desk right now. So as you can see, our goal is to lower the action level to 5 BP in public schools. Is in our state bill of the government desk right now. So he just needs to sign it, and yeah. So this is one of our students, one of our classmates that is in our school. His name is Luis, and he is calling to action speech and has been shared nationwide as part of the project Soapbox. So our art activism has gone viral, which has led to more recital testing and exposure for our public health levels. So most of our classmates, and including me myself, we have posted in social media or emailed the governor about the lead in water. And this is another one of our classmates, our students in our school. It's Gabriel, has been lobbying the mayor and receiving a personal response back from the mayor, de Blasio. And at the same time, our school and classmates have become related on tiny single-use water bottles. This isn't suitable, environment friendly, nor cost effective. So technically, we have these water bottles at our school, and you can see them everywhere on the hallways, on the classrooms, they're left. And this in the future will affect us and our environment. So, so what do we do to help this? In December of 2020, we wrote a grant together and obtained funds to purchase water bottles with the most popular student design logo to promote the use of our water fountains that provided access to environment-friendly lead-free bleach. We are advocating for changes at the school by making our voices heard and discussing concerns with our school leadership. We want to enhance sustainability at our school and have voice and how school funds are spent. We should not be wasting our funds in bottled waters. We should waste on something that will help us all. And we want to thank you for listening and test your water today.
Thank you to my four fantastic student activists, Melissa, Johanny, Saga, Enrique. Thank you for sharing your activism and for your hard work.
No, absolutely. I'm already seeing people in the chat, thanking the presenters, thanking you for, you know, the work that you're doing as the instructor as well. And, you know, thank you so much for presenting, and students, for all that you've done. You know, as I reflect on this, one of the things that really jumped out to me was that one image that was these stacks of single-use water bottles, right? And so as we get to the closing here and kind of send you all off, right? This idea that students identified in their community a very clear problem, right? What is it that we've been talking about this whole time? Some of the words that I've written down: discovery, engagement, student-centered, skills, community, real world, reflection. That image of the stacks of water bottles in that school because the lead levels are too high, in some ways encapsulates why everything that we've talked about for the past 2.5 hours or 2 hours is so important. And so one of the things that we really want to, you know, inspire all of you on this convening here today is to think about and reflect about the ways that you can bring civic engagement into your classroom, right? We've heard from experts about the challenges and the opportunities and the pedagogy. You've seen some very real boots on the ground examples. You've heard from students taking time to present to you today to talk about the things that they've done. You've heard from your fellow educators who have successfully navigated the permission slips and the standardized testing and all of the very, very real challenges that we've all identified today, but it can be done. And so this is just the start of a broader conversation that I hope that we can all have about the importance of civic engagement in the classroom and why it's essential in the 21st century. And so we want to thank all of you for joining us today. We've really appreciated your time, your engagement, for populating the chat, for working on the mural. And we just want to thank you for all that you do for your students to make it so possible for them to succeed, not just in the classroom, but in the broader world outside. One of the things that we're going to ask is there's going to be a survey that's going to pop up at the very end. We would love for you to give us your thoughts. We would love to continue the conversation. And the way for us to be able to do that is to know, you know, what you enjoyed, what we can do better, those kind of things. So look for that as soon as the Zoom closes. And again, I want to thank, on behalf of all of the panelists, on behalf of all of the students, as well as the teachers and the New York Fed staff, thank you so much for joining us here today. And thank you all for what you do for your students. Thank you.